Hello and welcome to this webinar. I'm Paul Skelton. I'm one of the editors at RetailX and Internet Retailing. I'm joined today by Christian Schwendemann from Citrix. We're talking about evolving an agile retail business for an agile world. Our webinar is sort of based around a white paper that I'm producing with Citrix that's coming out in a few weeks' time. This aims to be a nice little taster, a nice discussion around the subject of how retail businesses need to transform themselves, particularly around making their staff and processes more agile, more fit for a world where people work remotely, do more hybrid working, that sort of thing. All very interesting. Christian, if you could just tell everybody who you are and what you do at Citrix.
Yeah, thank you. So excited to be with you, and was great to work with you. And so what I'm doing at Citrix is what I'm getting questioned and asked very often, as my title, Go-to-Market Strategy Management, doesn't really tell what it's all about. And I think the easiest way to explain it is that I connect with our customers and have a word with them what they really need on a daily basis, how the world is changing and technology adopts. And this is what I carry back into our organization, where I work with the teams on putting this into our products.
Brilliant, excellent, thank you. We'll come to Christian shortly to get into the real sort of meat of how you evolve your retail business to be more agile. First of all, I'm going to just take a little whistle-stop tour through some of the key findings and key points in our retail report into this subject, just really to set the scene about how consumer habits have changed and why this is impacting retailers in a sort of more kind of back office and staffing side of things. We hear a lot, and I certainly write a lot about how retailers have to evolve and adapt what they do. We don't really ever, I don't think, look at the sort of practicalities of how to make that happen for the staff that are involved, both in stores and running the online part of the business and in the back office. So that's what this report aims to do. Today's webinar, as I say, is going to open up the discussion about that really, and let us sort of explore some of the solutions and ideas around this that hopefully will whet your appetite and see you downloading the white paper when it comes out in about 2 weeks' time. So just to take a look, first of all, at what consumers are doing. As you can see on my first slide here, the way that consumer habits have changed has really been driven by the way more of them are working at home in the pandemic. It's as simple as that. Now, obviously, we were forced to, in most countries, to work from home during the pandemic, and so it's a natural sort of move. So really, the data there that's from Eurostat just shows just how that has crept up. The thing that's interesting about it is that it's something that seems to have stuck, as we'll see with some of the other research a bit further on. A lot of these people who were forced to work at home now want to. Now, this is a sort of doubly impactful on what we're talking about today, because one, it means consumers who are buying things are at home, therefore they're more inclined to be doing online and digital retail and interactions with retailers and brands. But also, many of these people are also workers, and they are working from home and wanting their business that they work for to adapt to allow them to do that, which is really what this is all about today. But just to look a bit more about what consumers are doing, if we see on the next slide that the consumer habits have changed around digital interactions across all the different regions globally, Asia Pacific, Europe, North America. It's pretty much been fairly similar, thanks to, once again, the pandemic. This research from McKinsey shows that sort of adoption of digital interactions, so through messaging and the internet and chat and social and all of those things lumped together, has accelerated. Now, it was already starting to grow, as you can see there across 2017, 18 and 19 in those regions and globally. But really, the pandemic has rapidly accelerated that. So we have a whole bunch of consumers who are very much more digitally minded, and their first sort of port of call is to look digitally at how they are going to interact with brands and retailers, which has a huge impact on how retailers have to service those customers. And that's not just that they have to have an e-commerce strategy. It's now, as we come out of lockdowns and people return to some form of physical retail as well, it's about how the digital and physical work together. So as we'll see on the next slide, you can see that that's moved across all age groups. It's growing. Obviously, the older people seem to be less inclined to do it, but generally, overall, all age groups are shopping online. That's where they're purchasing, and that, of course, has to be where retailers need to go. Now, as we'll see on the next slide, this online move has sort of been driven to a large extent by mobile. Now, what's interesting about this data, I think, is that it shows that in-store shopping has declined and then risen again, pretty much back to where it was before the pandemic. But mobile has continued to grow. And I think part of this is that, yes, more people are at home, more people are shopping online, but equally, and we're starting to see it in a lot of the sort of news that we're covering on internet retailing, is that a lot of these consumers are heading back to stores, but they want a much more digital and mobile enabled experience when they get there, which of course has as I say, a huge impact on how retailers service customers. They have to be digitally ready for them in the stores and online, and a sort of hybrid mixture of the two. Now, as we can see in the next slide, this hybrid idea of shoppers moving both from into the online realm and into stores and all that working together is reasonably well exemplified by how click and collect has changed and is set to change based on how it's moved across the pandemic. Now, as you can see there, across France, Germany, the UK and Europe, it's a prediction into 2023 based on the figures of 21, 22, 2020 and 2021. It's set to grow, and it's set to grow in a fairly sort of almost exponential way there. Germany, obviously, everyone's going to go, yeah, but look at Germany. Why is it not happening in Germany? I think from the research I've done, the Germans just like it one way or the other. They either like to go in store or they like to do it online. They haven't really embraced that hybrid model. But if you discount Germany, in France, UK, rest of Europe, the move very much is to this digitally enabled physical retail. Now, that is something that retailers are not struggling to meet, but it's a rapid change and a rapid challenge. And that means that they have to look at different ways of servicing their customers. So as we see on the next slide, what are they doing? Well, 48% of workers generally across the whole working population want to work remotely post-pandemic, compared to 30% who said they wanted to pre-pandemic. So that's quite a change. Now, that's like in all jobs, but it gives a good flavour of how workers, staff are thinking about how they now want to work in this hybrid world. So it's not just about retailers having to sell in a hybrid way. They need to employ and act around their staff in a hybrid way also. A survey from Microsoft in late 2021 found that 73% of store staff in retail who have been working flexibly want to continue to do so. I mean, that's a staggering number of people. That's, 3/4 of them have had a taste of doing it sort of remotely and in a hybrid way and in a different way, and they want to stick to it. So retailers, as we'll see from Christian shortly, are responding by moving to being more omni-channel. They've had to do that during the pandemic, obviously, with a huge and rapid focus on e-commerce and mobile commerce, but also using stores, dark stores when they were shut as fulfillment centers and all that kind of thing. Now the stores are open, we're moving to a more hybrid retail model. They're having to try and factor in the fact that many of their shoppers are coming in using the store as a showroom, buying online, hopefully from their own website, but you never know. And they're having to use technology in the company, in the stores, in their offices, to help transform how the staff in store and in the back office work, so that not only can they work remotely, work flexibly, but they can also service these needs, which involves equipment, networking, and the right kinds of apps and software to enable them to do it. Now, this is where we're going to get into the real nuts and bolts of what we're talking about today, is how do you make that happen? Before we come to that, there's a couple of, there's several case studies actually in the report that's coming out in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to just look quickly at a couple of them. The first one is It's Lindex, which is a large fashion retailer, Scandinavian, sells across Europe. And it has implemented technology to, first of all, instigate a much better queuing system for its website so that it can manage web traffic and therefore the customer experience of people trying to get on to buy, especially in peak times, more effectively. That's obviously worked very well during sort of lockdown when its website was under a lot of pressure with a lot of traffic because it had no stores that were open. Now, as things have evolved and moved, it's using the system it has there to offer much more sort of customer segmentation data to improve how they target them, how the customers are served, scaling up for more e-commerce in the future. It's won several awards for doing this. And it's also helping the staff work much more flexibly, giving them remote access to the right sort of information they need. And it's fundamentally, as the company's CTO, Florian Westerdahl, says, it's changing the way that the company does business. It means the whole company is much more agile. And this has been done off the back of using Citrix's ADC, as Christian will talk us through. The second of the two case studies looks at how Spanish fashion retailer Desigual has, over the course of the lockdown, sought to connect its staff better to each other and to head office. Now, this process, interestingly, at Desigual started in 2019, before the pandemic, because the company had identified there were a lot of efficiency gains to be made through modernizing and streamlining how the business itself talked to itself. It's deployed a sort of mobile first digital workplace management solution to do this, which, that's a lot of sort of keywords and blah, blah, blahing. But really what it does is allow 500 staff who are using the platform to access information about all the products, the stock, talk to each other, move things around, help control where deliveries go to best meet the needs and demands of the company at any particular time. It's made the company much more agile and focused. It's also allowed them to, as a company, to be much more in touch with their staff. So there's a much better two-way dialogue between individual staff in stores and store managers with each other and with head office. And I think this is a really great example of just how this sort of move to hybrid working to service a sort of hybrid retail model works. And there are many challenges to doing it, but it can deliver some really interesting upsides across every aspect of the business: sustainability, sort of efficiency, stock control. It helps drive e-commerce and store sales. It helps stores fulfill e-commerce and vice versa. It's a really interesting and I think vital way that retailers need to adapt in the sort of modern age. This is where it's going. Shoppers are coming back to the stores, but they want this digital experience. And I think this is going to drive the next sort of set of development with retailers. So that, in a nutshell, are some of the key points from the report. There's a lot more in there, a lot more detail as to how to do that. The report will be out, as I say, in a couple of weeks' time. But before we get to that, I'm going to hand over to Christian, who is going to talk us through Citrix's role in all this and how it can help businesses do this. And then we'll have a bit of a discussion around some of the other practicalities about this and where some of the efficiency gains are for retailers in more specific circumstances. So, Christian.
Thank you. I think when we talk about the IT in general, not only in retail, the thing I have noticed speaking to our customers is that more and more what we adopt in our private living, so as a customer, what is really relevant to me, I expect to have a shopping experience that is easy to consume, easy to shop, where guidance is given where to find what I'm looking for. I don't want to be the professional in shopping, so I don't want to first understand a shopping solution before I can use it. Looking at the IT world and what organizations need to address these days, it's very similar. So we see here on the slide that it says 85% of IT organizations will embrace cloud-first principles, and the reason for this has as a foundation for it that today we have more and more solutions in place which needs to be implemented first and then be operated, and at the same time the personnel addressing the solutions need to be trained, need to be aware how to operate the systems. And that's where I think the solutions grow that fast and many that only cloud solutions, where it's right at your fingertips, ready to use on day one, that's one of the reasons to adopt cloud first. But also the complexity of solutions to implement them within an organization is the next reason. We also see that these needs in a modern world where I want to bring my personal device, I want to work with the existing set of devices and operating systems I'm already aware of, is also the reason that we will see that customers and organizations will need to adopt zero trust concepts. Because right now I'm also sitting in my home with my personal device connected to corporate resources. And that's where we need to find a way to easily access resources from the organization on a device which is maybe not trusted, but have this context of security that is needed to deliver what is expected by the employee. And at the same time, also when we talk about delivering resources to our customers, so websites, services, etc., it should be the same secure and easy way to consume these resources. And that's this flexibility on the right hand with the 73% we see here, where workers want flexible remote work. And that's what you said some slides earlier also, that this flexibility is what some employees and some customers at the same time expect. And we also see, looking back at the history of how we got there, that we now use smartphones to read our emails. This wasn't invented by IT organizations. This was the customer that brought the consumer devices and said, this is easy to use. I expect to use this device and this easy to consume way to read my emails in my work life. And when we move to the next slide, we also now see that this any what Citrix all the years was talking about, any user, any location, any device, grew the last years. For any user is these days not only my own employee. Companies start to think of having a context, a secure network for everyone, because in retail we have kiosk computers, info terminals, we have guest Wi-Fi's, we have the opportunity to connect to a corporate resource, to a corporate network, not only for employees, but other persons we might not have a contract with, as it's the customer yet, and still need to have the holistic view of security and measurements to protect the services. And protecting services means we deliver applications to employees, to external contractors these days. And this is what we see in this any application pillar here. We have Windows applications, installed applications, but also software as a service and web applications growing more and more. And this is also the reason when we think of the future, do we really want to have this defined way of how the employer needs to access resources, giving the freedom of access and type of access to different set of applications is what especially young employees ask for. And also when we have a look at the generation of people coming from schools and university, they live different with the applications than we might have been expected so far. And this is also the question, how to fast onboard people into my organization. And with people, I mean also the external contractors. When we look at the very right, any work type, it's more and more common that we onboard external contractors for specific projects. If it's just for a few weeks or months, we onboard external partners to work with us on the long term together with us. And especially in retail, we have very often part-time workers, for example, just on a Saturday, who need a very specific information right at their fingertips. So they want to come into the store, want to have the information, what is on their task, and at the end of today, to easily and fast get their job done. And when we move to the next slide, we also see that the priority is to boost worker productivity. Boosting worker productivity means today to no longer have the need for a very long onboarding and training on how to use software, where to find software, how to log on. It should be easy to use. And this is also my personal expectation. When I start in a new organization, I do not want to know when is something secure, how is something secure. I do not want to get enabled on the needed informations to live within a secure environment. I expect that the device that is being handed to me is secure. And if I connect to the network, that everything I can share with others, I'm allowed to share. So it shouldn't be any longer this trade-off from usability versus security. We can have both at the same time, but it needs a digital foundation. It needs a plan that was built and designed on how we can enable this way of working. And that's also where we see projects failing. If we just start coping and adopting, then the modernization of solutions will not work. And when we move to the next slide, we have also some notes here from the National Institute of Standards and Technology that said that 92% of the reported vulnerabilities are in apps. So the applications, the web applications, the services we provide to customers, we provide to external facing consumers that are not inside our organization, maybe. And so it's not the network, it's not the firewall very often. And the message on the top says also that 2021 has officially been a record-breaking year for vulnerabilities. And we have heard the news, we have seen the different attacks happening, especially also in retail sector, that got attacked and were not able to produce goods or in retail sell products. And this is where we need to rethink also how we can react to this if everything has stopped working, if we can no longer serve our customers. What is the business continuity planning? Because this is something which is very often forgotten. Having a detailed look on this, if we move to the next slide, we see that today on the left, we have people, employees, external contractors, but also customers, as we said. And we have different devices. And with different devices, we talk about old devices and new devices, which an organization needs today to be aware of the data points. Who is connecting? From where are they connecting? And what devices are they using? Because this is the important thing to understand. We see on the right hand, it's not just my data center, it's not just my web application, it's different resources an organization today consumes on their own, delivers to others, and we need to be aware of how secure can a measurement be defined so that we do not lock out specific devices of customers which we want to have. So this world got quite complex, and this is where Citrix plays an important role with having a holistic security solution that collects these different data points and presents it in an easy to understand way. This is the aspect of hybrid and secure and easy, and this brings another advantage with it. So when we are flexible, when we're agile in how we design our solutions and how we can address different needs like business continuity, many of our customers question if high availability and redundant data centers is the way to go. Especially in retail, we are aware that our customers look at sustainability. And when we move to the next slide, this is also a message I want to present here, that IT is playing an important role where we have a lot of opportunity to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas, not only in operating the systems, but also these systems need to be created, built, need to be transported to our data center, and the way we design solutions can be more efficient. And if it's more efficient, it's also saving here greenhouse gas in the end. That's the one aspect. The other one is that we see here that already about 10% of all business electricity is being used by IT, and that commuting is also causing a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So if we think how remote work can reduce this commuting and how we can increase the efficiency by having more sustainable systems, so more up-to-date systems, but also more well-designed systems, this could be the reason for modernization also within an organization. When we move to the next slide, we also see that this inefficiency I just mentioned is also something on the device level. So instead of buying new and well-equipped devices, the repurpose of existing devices, and with this, the reduced amount of new produced devices is the one. But the other is also to rethink if the device I was using so far is addressing the need in a proper way. We just talked about bring your own devices. We talked about modern devices like tablets. So this could also be questioned if the way we operate, if the way we deliver resources also to our employees is still the way we want it to have. So moving to the next slide, we get a good summary of these options we have, which is the low energy device choice, because with Citrix, all the applications needed are being presented from inside the data center to any device. No matter if it's a Windows, a Linux device, if it's a browser-based application, it can be consumed on any device. At the same time, there is no trade-off in usability versus security, as we now have this flexible choice from where, and location, but also from which device resources could be consumed. And this can be the low-emission device, which can be a tablet, a thin client, or a repurposed device. And at the same time, we can design the solution to have more modern systems in the way delivered from a more efficient data center. And what is an efficient data center? A cloud provider of your choice could be where the resources started on demand when the need is given. So scaling out when the load is big and many consumers try to reach our web services, and the same for our employees. When they start their work life, the resources are started. And this is what we see in retail also happening, that these new concepts are being adapted. And in the end, we can, with this, then also expand the existing lifespan of devices, because all the compute resources are being delivered from the data center. So this is a summary of where Citrix plays today an important role. And we have heard now networking and network security, load balancing, and cloud concepts. So it's very, very many options that exist for our customers today to rethink and rebuild a digital foundation.
Interesting stuff. Yes, it's interesting that you close off your presentation there with the sort of environmental and efficiency gains. I think what's interesting about this move to a more sort of flexible and hybrid working approach, if you sort of forget for the time being the fact that customers want that from retailers, is that there's efficiencies to be gained in terms of how processes work and making people's lives easier, saving companies money, and it has this huge environmental impact as well. So there's a lot to be gained from this. So just looking back at some of the things that came out of my presentation and of yours, Christian, I was just going to pick your brains really for the last part of the webinar, really, as to sort of some of the more specific issues around this sort of hybrid flexible working idea and what it means for retailers. Firstly, sort of with so many wanting to work remotely, 73% of them wanting to be flexible and work, not necessarily all 73% wanting to work remotely, but part of flexible working is remote working. What sort of challenges does that throw up for retail businesses across the sort of different departments, such as sort of management and sales and HR and IT, do you think?
So what my experience is that we are in a phase of testing. So testing means that just a few years ago, it was unthinkable that we have call centers being operated from home, or that someone is selling a kitchen to me, not in person in the store, but virtual on a Teams call, for example. And so the world is changing. And as I said, we need to rethink on the technology that is being used to gain access to the existing systems. And also we need to have a look at compliance. So where am I allowed to process data? Where am I allowed to store data? And this is a question that sometimes is being left behind. So the usability versus security I've mentioned sometimes already, but it's also the architecture of the final solution. So this is also the risk which I addressed in the security statement from the NIST department, where they said that the application is causing the security risk. And that's because existing systems, existing processes are just being carried home and now being operated from a different location the same way before. And that's not how digitalization works in most of the cases. So it needs to be rethinked. Is this a process that will work if we are accessing it from home, if the data is being stored on a device which is not in our control? So this is the one. And the second is our security concept of accessing resources still the correct for this? So how do we connect these two, let's call them branch office and main office, because every home office is kind of a branch office, isn't it? And we are not aware who is connected within this location.
No, that's quite right. Part of that, I mean, you touched on it there already and mentioned it in your presentation, is this idea of the sort of bring your own device. It's long been a problem for all organisations that people are increasingly bringing their own devices. The world of more sort of flexible working does throw up that dilemma: use your own device or supply your staff with bespoke devices and be more controlling over what can be done with them. What do you think is best? Should a company be giving out their own smartphones and laptops and controlling them, or is it okay for staff to use their own equipment? And I mean, interestingly, in one of your slides, you said it's the apps that's the weakness, not the network. What about the devices?
So for the devices, hybrid work is something where we want to give employees the choice. Do you want to work from home or do you want to come to the office? And I think with the choice of devices, it should be the same. So also Citrix ourselves, we also had the choice if you would like to prefer the bring your own device, or if you would like to prefer to have a company device, which is managed. So it's the preference, what on the one hand exists, what on the other hand I would like to use. But in the end, the most relevant question is, how can we deliver the application, the content, the file, whatever it is, in a secure manner to this device? If it's a bring your own device, it's most likely a non-managed device. And at the same time, if it's my own device, do I really want my organization to have full control and management of my personal device? And I guess the answer for most of us will be, no, we don't want that the organization is monitoring my private device. And this is where Citrix has exactly the solution, that only the work context is being controlled, is being restricted, has the opportunity also to lock out all the bad software, let's call it like this. So screen grabbers, keyloggers, all the bad software from the internet, to catch what's inside this organization channel. And that's what I also would expect from my employer, to only control the work relevant content. And I'm fine with this. And I think having this choice is what employees also would expect.
Interesting. So yes, I think a perfect solution really to that problem. Part of the sort of technology play around this involves AI, artificial intelligence, plays a big role, particularly in customer service. Often calls are answered by a chatbot, aren't they, and then routed accordingly. What role is AI likely to play in enabling remote hybrid digital working?
So there are many aspects, and one aspect which I personally like very much is the fact that it should help us, help me as an employee, help managers, help also to collect information from systems. When we look at the aspect for the employee, do I really need to ask my manager, where can I find information ABC? Where can I apply for a credit card? What is the portal to ask for help when I have a security problem? So this is where virtual assistants based on existing frequently asked question can answer all these questions. So it's an information that is provided within minutes, and this helps on the one hand the manager that should answer this to reduce the amount of work, and at the same time get the answer the employee needs, maybe also with the corresponding document or link right away. So this is the virtual assistant aspect of having this AI that assists. When we look on the IT department view, we see more and more different systems reporting logs, reporting informations, and we have kind of an overload of information that can't really be easy understood. So if I'd have to view the logs on my own, I would need to be a specialist to understand what's going on. And that's where these technologies can bring in all the information into one system that then presents one single dashboard, a single dashboard in which easy to understand for each and every human understandable metrics come out. If you turn on this security measurement, 5 customers will no longer be able to consume your web shop, your resource. Or on the other hand, this user is behaving different than in the last 5 days. It could be potential security breach because someone stole his password. And so this is where we have AI as an assistant that could highlight that something is happening in the system or is going on, which would be hard to find out on a manual process. And the last part of this is the automatization in IT itself, so that repeatable steps are no longer done manually, but the system learns and deploys systems automatically. So auto scale is what we have, for example, for virtual apps and desktops, so that the needed desktops on demand are being delivered. And the same we can do also when we talk about consumers accessing web shops, that we start to spread out new servers just on demand. And that's where we again have this talking point of sustainability.
Yeah, which we shall come to in a moment. Before I get to that, though, I wanted to ask you about using this sort of technology and the sort of systems that Citrix can offer to help with retailers onboarding staff. The retail industry, particularly the physical retail industry, does have a reasonably high turnover of staff. It has a lot of seasonal workers, particularly around Christmas, but it often, especially in fashion, tends to employ younger people who don't do it for as long. They move on to other things. So how can this sort of thing help make more efficient the onboarding of new staff and the training of new staff, and making that simple and more cost effective?
That's kind of the expectation of guided working. So I said, if I would start working within an organization as an employee, I would expect that I have all the relevant informations and tasks available. And so this is where our Citrix workspace provides exactly this. This could be notifications from the organization. This could be informations like PDFs, how the shop should be prepared for the next retail action or specific sales day. This could be also the actions like click here to apply for your next vacation. Click here to open a support case if you need help with your IT equipment, and also to summarize the needed applications that on a daily basis are needed. So this helps me to onboard very fast, to get the informations and notifications at the right time, so that when I on a Saturday start working, I have everything right in front of me and do not need to read an email here, read a document there. It's all prepared for me.
Brilliant. Yes, it's interesting. It's an interesting part of it. I think the guided working. There's quite some interesting stuff in the white paper about that, but people can download that and read it when it comes out. Finally, then, sustainability. It was a big part of your presentation, and I think it's something that really is driving retailers in all sectors, and it's certainly shaping consumer behaviour. It's become a bit of a watchword within retail, with consumers demanding goods and that are produced and delivered and moved around sort of ethically and sustainably. What role does what you do play in helping companies deliver that? We've touched on sort of the commuting aspect of things, but what other areas can it help with?
So the other areas are most likely the view on the repurposing of existing devices, or to use low energy devices so that do not have this very strong compute power, and at the same time have low energy consumption then. So these are today the most common aspects organizations are already aware. Currently, we are also in a phase where we see more and more also adoption of hyperscalers, so cloud providers in which you can run your compute power. And why do we need to have redundant and high available hardware was what I already questioned. So imagine today you don't have just one single server serving this service. You have at least twice that. If one fails, the other takes over. And so the same is happening with data centers. And that means that you have multiple times the resources you need available and just running along for more or less nothing, just for safety. And that's where adopting cloud services could help, that on demand start, but also create this resource. And this is something where we can address also business continuity. And before I have the different C-level roundtables and meetings, I always research the organizations. Do they have sustainability goals? What is their sustainability statement from the past years? And I see more and more organizations putting also business continuity plans and IT plans in there. But that's something a lot of organizations today have not in their focus, that cloud adoption could help them to drive sustainability in the aspect of the reduced hardware, but also in the aspect of business continuity planning for a lower cost. So they can reduce the cost of capex of buying this hardware, but also in the cost of operational aspects, because someone needs to implement and run and upgrade these systems. And so this is a very big opportunity for organizations these days.
No, absolutely. It's been very interesting. I think sort of the sort of takeaway really from all this is that for retailers, many of the things you're already doing with consumers in the consumer facing part of it, you can apply to your staff and internal processes and make your business more efficient, and give your staff the ability to work more flexibly and in a more hybrid fashion, which is I think a very interesting thing for all retailers who are listening to this. I think as well, as you say, on the sustainability side, it's vitally important to do that. And there is a huge saving to be made. I remember reading an article, it was a couple of years ago now, about the sort of actual sort of energy use of the internet. And it's actually quite astounding how just the energy used in the public internet to run it is quite high. As you say, factoring in then, redundancy, bespoke server farms, all that sort of thing for companies to use. It's also a huge environmental issue also, and a cost. And I think all these things, as you say, sort of help to make businesses more agile, more lean, and much more cost effective and more sustainable, and hopefully keeping their staff really happy. So what more could any retailer want than to do this? So anyway, well, Christian, thank you very much for joining us to do that. As I say, the white paper is out in a couple of weeks from you watching this webinar. So do stay tuned. Those of you that sign up to watch it will be sent a link to download the report, which has a lot more on what we've talked about in more detail and how to actually practically deliver it. But until then, thank you very much, Christian. Thank you very much for listening, and see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much also.